Yo, what's going on guys, my name is David Preston and welcome back to Honest Reviews, the show where I take a game and I review it without any of the bullshit and I give you my complete and honest opinions. In today's episode I'm going to be fooling around with a game that I was extremely excited for upon its announcement and I was extremely satisfied with upon completion, and that is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. The game that takes the Dragon Ball Z canon and interprets it into a video game that is an RPG open world exploration type game. And I think it is, to put it simply right now, is great. Obviously I'm going to get into what makes it great, what makes it, you know, a little bit lackluster in some places as we go through the video, so there's nothing to worry about there. But regardless of that, I'm just going to stop the yapping and we're going to get straight on with the review of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot for the PlayStation 4, PC and Xbox One. So as I just mentioned, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot takes the original story of the Dragon Ball Z anime and manga and interprets it into an RPG video game. And the story, for the most part, is extremely faithful to the source material. I noticed a few scenes that were cut out that were fan favourites. Some of my favourite scenes were butchered as well, which is quite unfortunate. But in terms of the story, all the key moments are kept, you know, and all the filler is technically gone and turned into side missions for the most part. As I noticed, some of the filler, such as the driving episode in the original Dragon Ball Z, is now turned into part of the intermission, which is not the story missions that you have in between progressing through the story and just pretty much getting to the next part of it. Like there's these little side intervals between the main arcs of Dragon Ball Z, whether that be the Saiyan Buu androids or Frieza Saga. So it's nice how they've streamlined the story, especially for players who haven't watched the anime before. You know, if they want this to be their first experience with Dragon Ball Z, it basically just eliminates all the points that they don't need to know and just sticks with, you know, the stuff that is important and will stick with them. But when it comes to most of the scenes that I absolutely adored in the anime, some of them have been just either butchered or taken out entirely. For example, one of the fan favourite scenes being It's Over 9000 is not present in this game. And also the Super Saiyan 3 transformation, that is no longer 3 minutes long worth of streaming. It is now only 30, it's not even less than, it's like, I don't know how long it is exactly, but it's roughly 10 to 15 seconds of a little bit of screaming. That's it. It's extremely short and streamlined, and it doesn't give you the sense of power that the original scene gave you. And then one of my favourite scenes as well, the Ultimate Gohan Arrival scene, it's pretty faithful, and I think it goes with the Dragon Ball Z Kai dub. But in terms of the scene itself, I don't know, like it just feels incomplete without the Bruce Faulconer score. That's just most of this game, to be honest, because I do love the Bruce Faulconer score more than the original Japanese score and the Dragon Ball Z Kai score. But if eventually we're given an option to use it as DLC in the game, I would more than happily pay for it, and I'm sure many other people would as well. But for now, the soundtrack is still fantastic, the visuals are great, and everything just flows together nicely in terms of story and how it all arcs together eventually. It doesn't force you to just run through the story as fast as you can. It allows you to take your time and explore, and also add to those hours of playtime once you've finished the game. So the story is completely intact, nothing is changed apart from a few scenes being slightly changed or cut entirely, but they're the scenes that aren't necessarily important apart from the Over 9000 scene. Like I mentioned before, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an open world RPG, so that means most of the gameplay involves you running around the world of Dragon Ball, interacting with other characters, doing side quests for them, just doing random encounters every so often. If you've ever played a 3D, well, I wouldn't say just 3D, if you've ever played a post Final Fantasy X Final Fantasy game, so 12, 13, 15, with the more hack and slash style gameplay, or even the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo or God of War, it's kind of reminiscent of that, but in a sense it's a lot more streamlined, as the combat mainly revolves around, you know, mashing one button the entire time, which is the circle button for base attacks, and then the square button for key blasts, which is a little bit disappointing. I would have expected a lot more out of this, considering Dragon Ball Z was more about the martial arts side of things towards the start. Obviously that eventually shifted its focus into abilities, and then that transferred over to Super. But the original Dragon Ball and the start of Dragon Ball Z was more about how they handled, you know, combat situations. and it's a shame that we don't really get to see many different ways to combo into attacks in this game, because that was something I was really looking forward to, which was the gameplay. It isn't disappointing by any means necessary, and it controls really well, but for what it is, it's a little bit lackluster considering it's coming from a Dragon Ball Z game. I would have expected a lot more. Something on the line of Dragon Ball FighterZ, which released a few years prior. But it's not the point, because the game it plays fantastically, it controls beautifully, and you can't really complain about much because it is a lot of fun, and that is one of the best things about this game. It is fun. I never felt burnt out during any time of playing this game. It always felt fresh, exciting, and even though I knew the story, I just didn't get bored of it. It was just an extremely pleasant game to play through. It brings back good memories of watching Dragon Ball Z, and it's a nice way to recap the story if you haven't watched it in a long time, or if you forgot some things. And being in that situation yourself and actually allowing these events to unfold, it's just something really special. Like, for example, having the father-son Kamehameha happen after you defeat Cell for that in that last battle is really extraordinary to see. And even though I have seen it a million times, some of these scenes still get me tearing up. Like, it's the impact this game leaves on you, even if you haven't watched, Dragon Ball Z, the anime, or read the manga yourself. It's there, it's open for everyone, and everyone can enjoy this game, which is one of the main reasons why it's so good. In terms of content, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is filled to the brim with things to do, whether that be exploring the open world to gather materials to build cars, whether that be, once again, exploring the world to gather up meat to make meals with Chi-Chi, or whether that be keep training to increase your levels, do random encounters, side quests, level up your characters to the max using the skill palettes, or even just going for 100% completion in the story in general. There's a whole lot to do in this game, and even more is unlocked after the final boss with Majin Buu, which is incredible because not only does it add a lot more playtime to the game, it also just increases the challenge even more. Because when I finished the game for the first time, which was from obviously the Raditz arrival to the death of Buu, I thought that this game lasted quite a long time because I had roughly 24 hours of playtime before I finished the main story. And then when I went back to finish the post-game content, which was the extra boss battles, upgrading the characters, etc., my playtime skyrocketed up to 50 hours, which is ridiculous. Now, I'm not complaining because obviously there's a lot to do in this game, and obviously if there's a lot to do, you can keep coming back to it and have fun with it, which is a good thing. Well, in my opinion, it is anyway. Like, I could play this game for hours on end. It's extremely fun. But in terms of some of the content, some of it is really repetitive. Like, the side missions mainly consist of either defeating an enemy, retrieving an item, or something along those lines. It's never anything significant enough to benefit to the story, which is a bit of a shame, and it does get a little bit boring after a while having to go back to do the side missions that you may have missed, or you want to go back to just doing general, etc. It's a bit disappointing in that side of the game, but I still can't complain because the main story lasts long enough to put those to the side, for me anyways, enough. And in terms of extra activities you can do, you can play baseball, you can go fishing, and you can drive a car. There's all sorts to do. You can go to other planets after you finish the game, whether that be New Namek, King Kai's planet, Land of the Kais, etc. There's a lot to do in this game, and it definitely doesn't get it doesn't get boring at any point, which is a good point, which is a good thing about this game. Like, and even though I did say the side quests will get boring, as a whole, the game shouldn't feel boring. So if you want me to give you an example of what I mean by boring, it's when you have to grind repetitively for things to unlock the next section of a game. So a good example that a lot of people would be familiar with is the Sun and Moon medals from Sonic Unleashed on the PS3 and the 360, because you had to gather so many before you could traverse it through to the next level or to continue the story, which got really annoying after a long time. But with this game, you never have to be forced to collect anything to continue the story unless it's part of a mission. Continuing the story after a main arc is finished is completely your choice, but you can even explore while the main story is going. You are never obliged to put the story before anything else, which gives a lot of freedom and a lot of sense to the player, but at the same time it is limited for what you can do until you finish the game, which is a bit unfortunate. But in terms of replayability and things to do in this game, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot will not disappoint, and it will last you a very long time if you're looking for 100%. In terms of overall polish, I was a little bit disappointed with this game because literally within the first 5 minutes of me playing this game, I encountered a glitch. Now, while it wasn't anything major such as something that will softlock the game, and it was only just a model duplication, it was still a glitch that was in the earliest moments of the game. Literally after finishing the spiritual fight with Piccolo and you had to run to the fishing spot, I managed to jump over the invisible barrier that blocked you from going back to where you started, and I was able to find Goku's model completely just duplicated and chilling there. Which, yes, fair enough, it was hilarious, but it is still a glitch. Again, a glitch is a glitch nevertheless. I also encountered model duplications on more than one occasion, as well as T-posing. And then, in terms of frame rate, the game did seem to drop a few frames every now and then. And while it wasn't frequent enough to be a major complaint, it's still a complaint that can be made because of, you know, the significance of it. Simply because, in terms of, this usually happens in gameplay, I didn't ever notice it in cutscenes, but during the gameplay when you are, let's say, transforming into a Super Saiyan form or whatever, usually the frame rate can drop. For example, when I was transforming into Super Saiyan 3 in one of my fights, and I had Vegeta doing a Gallic Gun as an assist, the frames just completely shit themselves and nothing would seem to move for about 5 seconds until the game eventually caught up with itself. Which, then again, with all this stuff that they have to have on screen at the same time, I don't necessarily mind it that much, and it is understandable that games will drop frames. I've played games with some even worse frame drops in this game. This is passable, most certainly passable, but it's still, considering, you know, the amount of playtime you're going to have on this game, and also, you know, the amount of stuff to do, you're going to expect some polish. You know, you want this game to be as clean as can be, which obviously isn't the case because no game's perfect and every game's going to have its bugs. But some of the bugs and, you know, issues in this game are really apparent, and they really do stick out like a sore thumb, which is a shame. So, as in terms of overall polish, the game's passable. You know, it's playable 100%, but there are some instances where you feel like it could have been brushed up on a little bit more, and it really does disappoint you as a consumer and a player. So what's the overall verdict of this game? Well, to be completely honest with you, I was still blown away by Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and how innovative it is to turn animes into RPGs. And ever since, you know, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was released, I've seen a few games that are taking a similar approach to it. Because I do understand that there's a My Hero Academia game coming out, as well as a One Punch Man title that I believe take a similar approach to their game as Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to look that up. But in terms of what this game does for the market, it really does set it apart, because this has easily become one of the fastest selling PlayStation 4 titles on the PS4's market, because it now has over 2 million copies sold, to my knowledge anyways. And while it may not be as fast selling as something like Red Dead Redemption 2, it definitely sold fast for a market that not a lot of people are interested in. So, you know, you can instantly big the game up for that instantly. But in terms of what I think of the game is completely different to what you may think of the game. So, while the soundtrack is good, and, you know, the gameplay is good, the story is faithful and all that, the presentation of this game sometimes is just abysmal, and I mean abysmal in the worst cases possible, which is really a shame, because, like, I really do want to love this game and have it in my top 10 games, but it just can't be. Like, there are some places in this, like, there are some things in this game that just make it really awkward. One of the things, for example, is during some cutscenes, they are just really barren of music and sound effects, which make them seriously awkward. It's towards the start of the game when Nappa gets hit by Goku. When he hits the floor in the original, there's impact, but in here it's literally just like someone's just dropped a pillow on the floor. It's really jarring where this game makes its screw-ups, but at the same time, it's an overall fun experience. But because it's a story game, I can't, you know, ignore the faults in its story and its presentation of the story. You know, I can't ignore the presentation of the characters and their strength. I have to take that into consideration, considering this game is all about Dragon Ball Z's canon, and it's not just about the open world RPG aspect. But while that is probably the best and most fun part of the game, in most instances anyway, because some of these cutscenes are extremely hype and you really do allow you to fall in love with the characters again, it's you know, I have to take into, like I just said, I have to take into consideration everything I've said over the course of this video that really hold the game down a little bit. So, like, if all the issues I mentioned then with the polish and the cutscenes weren't present, I think I might have been able to give this game a 9. But simply because of the lack of presentation, the lack of polish and low presentation efforts in some places, the game is dragged down a little bit, and also, you know, with the super simplistic combat getting a little bit repetitive and boring, you know, there's not a lot I can say about this game to big it up even more than I already have. So with that being said, I'm going to have to give Dragon Ball Z Kakarot my overall score of a 7.5. Now don't get me wrong, a 7.5 is a really high score. It's a great score. In fact, it's basically great, to put it simply, and the game most certainly gets my stamp of approval. But the thing is, I really do want to rank it higher. I want to give it more praise, but I really just can't ignore the jarring flaws in this game. So I'm just unable to do that, unfortunately. But nevertheless, it's still a fantastic game, and if you want to get into Dragon Ball Z and you don't want to have to watch the anime, then I could highly recommend this to you over the anime any day, because it won't take as long to watch and finish, and also it's just extremely fun to do it, and it's open to many people. So if you really want to, go ahead, pick up Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, play it, and I'm pretty sure you'll have just as much fun with it as I did. But if you really care about having a game that is almost flawless in its presentation, then you might want to leave it to the side until it goes on sale, because there are some things that will get on your nerves a little bit. But other than that, this has been my honest review of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all can agree with it in some instances, because I have seen some of these similar complaints on other people's reviews. So I'm not alone in what I'm saying here, but I still do love this game, and it is definitely in my top 20 games of all time. Just doesn't quite cut top 10. Anyways, I've been 8-Bit Preston. Thank you for watching the video. If you did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like. Let me know what you thought of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot in the comment section below if you've played it, and if you haven't played it, would you consider picking it up now after watching this review? Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, and peace out.